StrayAllDay.com.
Tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves me, you, him, her, them, and they to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And what we do is we put all this into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one masterclass, one university that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, you saw the title. Today's topic is what you can do if you are a white person. You are not a person of color. You're a non-POC individual, and you want to know what you can do to help. If you feel like you just want to be involved, you see there's a lot of things going on, you're a concerned citizen, and you see all this social justice stuff going on, you feel like some things are unfair that are happening to and for people of color in the United States of America, or maybe all over the world, and you want to get involved somehow, some way. You've heard some of the things that I've said. You heard some of my perspectives that I talked about, like how some social justice warriors are actually sending black people backwards, like I talked about a couple of days ago. What can you do if you want to get involved? If you're concerned, you want to feel like you're doing something, you feel like silence is violence. If you don't say anything, then you're complicit in everything that's going on, even though you are not responsible for what's going on. What can you do? Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do. And nothing I'm going to say here today, I'm not saying there's any hint of sarcasm. This is a real prescription that I'm going to give to any person who is non-POC, and doesn't matter where you're from, but if you are not looked at as a person of color in America, no matter where you're actually from or what your actual background is, but people look at you and they call you white, okay, this is what you can do. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about here today, because I know there are people, it's a very diverse audience for Work on Your Game. There are people who are not people of color who listen to this, people of all different ages, people from all different backgrounds. And I've said a lot on this subject on these social justice, race, police, government, whatever you want to call this topics. And I try to be as objective as a human being can be. I do have opinions just like you do. I try to be fair about it. And today I want to make sure I'm touching this, because I've had some people who are not people of color who reached out to me and said to me, Dre, I've heard what you said on these things. I agree with some things. I don't agree with some other things. But what can somebody do? If somebody does want to get involved, what can they do? Now, let me tell you some of the things that I've heard. When the social justice movement, if we want to call it that, this movement's been going on for decades. It's not a brand new thing. It didn't just start in the spring of 2020, but it's become a mainstream topic in the spring of 2020. But when that first happened, the spring of this year, there were a lot of black people, prominent black people, or black people with very strong voices and strong communities and audiences, just like I have, who came out and said things like, well, people who are not black, white people in America, you need to do something. And if a white person did something, like post a hashtag or a statement, they might have been admonished, like, hey, you need to do more. You need to do more to show. You're taking our money, you're taking money out of our communities, then that means you need to do something to give back to our communities. This is the admonishment that a lot of white people and white-owned businesses were receiving from some black people who I consider to be very smart, well-thought individuals were saying things like this, and I don't completely agree with that stance. I don't agree with that stance that just because a person is of a certain color and then some other people of that same color do something that you may see as wrong, it doesn't mean that the person who didn't do it is responsible. They're not guilty by association of just being the same color as that individual. That's not the way that it works. If a basketball player was to rob your house and steal your car and beat you up and kick one of your kids in the face, that doesn't mean you should be mad at me because I happen to be a basketball player too. I don't think that guilt by association actually works. Now, when it comes to this whole social justice movement, if we're going to call it that, it has worked against many people. I've seen it happen. I've seen people get straight up bullied. White people, white-owned businesses get straight up bullied by people of color, being told that they need to do something or quote unquote do more because they weren't doing enough to help black people who have convinced themselves and convinced the world that they are marginalized, that they are victims, that they can't succeed in America, that all these terrible things have happened over the years, which is the reason why they're not able to succeed today. And I don't buy into a whole lot of that. And I've talked about that, I think, enough. I may talk about it more in the future. We'll see. But today is not up for the black people directly. But if you do happen to be a person of color in America and you feel like this social justice movement is necessary because you do feel like you're a victim, you do feel you've been marginalized, you do feel that the system is rigged against you, I want you to listen to what I'm going to say here today, because even though it's not for you, it's about you. And those of you who are not people of color, living in the United States, you want to know what to do, this episode is directly for you. So I want you to listen closely, even take notes on anything that I say here. And if you want to challenge me on anything that I've said, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to engage. Point number one. The topic, once again, is what concerned white people can do for blacks. And leave a review of the show on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever you happen to be listening to this to let people know of the value that we're giving here on Working the Game. Even if you disagree with what I say today, leave a review of the show. Point number one, don't build wings for the bird. Yes, you heard me. Do not build wings for the bird. Any of you ever seen a underdeveloped bird that has fallen out of its nest and is on the ground? A lot of times by the time you see it, it's probably already dead. But if a underdeveloped bird falls out of its nest, one thing you can do that is okay is if you have the capability, you can pick the bird up and put it back in its nest. I think in some National Geographic shows or conservationist animal wildlife experts, they probably go around doing these things. But I've seen these little birds. Most of the time they're dead by the time I see their bodies on the ground, laid out because they fell out of a nest. That's the only thing you can do is put them back in the nest. That's all. Don't do anything else to help them out. Don't try to build wings for them and give them some wings that didn't naturally grow out of their body, they did not earn. Do not attach those to the bird. All right? Even if they seem to work temporarily, they're not going to work long term. In other words, what I'm saying here in point number one is get the fuck out of the way. I remember growing up, my dad was into having fish. He had this big fish tank. I think he still has a fish tank to this day. He's always been into keeping fish. And when we were kids, he had these tropical fish. And he would go to the fish store, and he would get all these different types of fish. And at one point in the fish tank, there had to be like 20 fish in the fish tank, and of all different species and stuff like that. And of course, any of you know anything about fish, they don't all get along, right? Sometimes you put the wrong kind of fish together, and they might actually end up attacking each other. But there was a good mix of fish in there at one point. And then one day, my dad had brought home a certain fish that was, for whatever reason, not compatible with the other fish that were in the tank. And as soon as this new fish got put into the tank, a few of the other fish started attacking this one fish. They just start attacking him. And as soon as he got in the tank, they just started attacking him. And my dad was like, damn. And I saw it. I remember seeing it when the fish got in there, like, damn, that was a bad idea. This fish is not going to last. And what my dad did at first, when he saw that this new fish was being attacked, as it got introduced into the fish tank, community, he had like a little net. That any of you ever had a fish tank, a little net that you can use to scoop out a fish or something like that, or scoop out food or anything like that. He used the net to kind of protect the new fish. So he had the new fish hidden behind the net while the older fish, the established fish, were trying to get to it and attack it, but they couldn't get to it while he was holding the net in front of it to shield the fish. But he knew, as well as anyone else would know, he can't stand there and hold the net forever. Eventually, he was going to have to let that fish do whatever it was going to do inside of that tank. He had nothing. There was no other option. All right, what can you do? Maybe put it back in the little plastic bag he bought it in and drive back to the fish store, which he wasn't going to do because he had already poured all the water out and introducing the fish to the tank. So eventually, he just had to let the net go, and he had to leave that fish in there to fend for itself. And by the next morning, I remember waking up the next morning and looking at the fish tank, and all you saw was a skeleton of that new fish. It had gotten eaten alive, killed, destroyed by the new fish in the tank. Now, why am I telling you? Am I telling you that this means you should leave people alone to die and get eaten alive by fish? No. What I'm saying is, if you are a non-person of color living in the United States and you feel you want to do something to help people of color who you feel are marginalized, or they have the system against them, or they don't have the same opportunities as you, for whatever reason you feel that way, the most valuable thing you can do to help another person who needs to get their weight up and get better is get the hell out of the way so that they can get their weight up and get better. You cannot force, as I said many times on this show, you cannot force equality by arbitrarily creating a situation that makes the playing field, quote unquote, level for everybody. All right, that's impossible. I've already talked about why equality is impossible. Why equality is not the equality that a lot of people are talking about. How it is a myth. I talked about this in masterclass number 730, and I talked about it again in episode number 1622, why equality is impossible. Do not offer help, because only thing you're doing when you're helping is like my dad holding the net over the fish that's going to get eaten alive anyway. All you're doing is delaying the inevitable. Do not create some new program that's supposedly going to make everything even. Listen, people in life, let me tell you something about human beings of any color. People don't pick themselves up until or unless they are forced to pick themselves up. I talked about this in my book, Work on Your Game. If somebody's already failing, you could do what you can to try to help them, but if they're not doing enough to pick themselves up, if they're not doing at least 51% of the work, then you need to let them fall. All right? Like they said in the movie, if he dies, he dies. People need to be doing at least 51% of the work for anything that leads to their success. And again, I wrote about this in my book, Work on Your Game, way before the whole social justice, quote, movement, close quote. All right, none of this is new. Your help hurts because people don't learn to be self-sufficient when you put them somewhere they didn't earn their way into. Your help hurts when people get put somewhere that they did not earn their way into. They did not become self-sufficient in the process. Therefore, they are unqualified, unequipped to be in a position that you put them in by quote unquote helping. Now they're going to fall even further because they're at a higher perch that they shouldn't have been in the first place. That's the bird falling out of the nest. By the time they hit the ground, they're already dead. Over. So the last thing that you need to do is create, again, like I said, some arbitrary lift for other people who haven't earned that lift on their own. You can, again, put the bird back in the nest, put people back in a position where they can do for self, but you can't do for them. This is why we did the episode, masterclass number 1621, just a couple weeks ago, how to do for self. When people start doing for self, all right, then they will learn how to pick themselves up. They will learn how to make themselves self-sufficient. They will learn how to put themselves on the plane that they want to be on. But they have to earn that. This is something that you have to earn. A bird has to earn its wings. They say, I've never seen this myself, but they say in a bird's nest, actual birds we're talking about here, that when a young bird's mother bird decides that young bird needs to get out of the nest and go live its own life, the mother bird will force that bird out of the nest. It will literally physically force the bird out of the nest, kicking the bird out, and that bird will have to learn how to fly at the moment that it gets kicked out the nest. One of two things is going to happen. Either A, it's going to fall to the ground and maybe die from the impact of falling, or maybe get eaten by one of those predators down on the ground, or B, is going to start using his wings as soon as it gets pushed out of that nest. There's no manual on using his wings. There's no online course that the bird took on using his wings. It's just a natural instinct that it uses those wings. That's why the wings are there. I mean, how's a bird know to build the nest? All right, it just knows. It's just instinctive. The bird will learn to use his wings when he gets pushed out that nest, or it's going to die. A or B. Sink or swim. And if you are a concerned white person who wants to help people of color, you got to understand people are either going to sink or they're going to swim on their own. You cannot force somebody to swim who doesn't want to. You can't provide wings to a bird that hasn't learned how to fly. That's just what the game is. Is it harsh? You can call it that. I'll just call it reality. It's just what it is. Point number 2. Topic here today is what a concerned non-POC, concerned white person can do for the social justice movement if you find yourself so inclined to do something. Number 2, stop apologizing for being white. I told you all, this is months ago this happened. One of the most funny things, it was almost surreal, but it was really funny when I heard it. Maybe a week or two after the social justice movement began. This is after George Floyd died in Minneapolis. I was listening to a podcast where Steve Kerr, Pete Carroll, and Greg Popovich, 2 NBA coaches and 1 NFL coach, were on talking. These are all old white guys who all work with, in charge of, a bunch of young black guys in their respective professions. And they were just talking about social justice and the things that they didn't know and the things they hadn't understood. And I'm listening to these 3 guys talk, and they were all pretty much, and mostly Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich, more than Pete Carroll so much, they were apologizing for their whiteness. They were literally apologizing for being white on their own podcast. And I thought this was hilarious because none of them had done anything wrong to anyone. They were all, as far as we know, upstanding members of society who are contributing to the world and doing positive things and helping other people do positive things. But they were apologizing just for the fact that they were white, and they, as they were saying on the episode, they didn't know about all these hardships that are coming towards black people on a day-to-day basis, or at least what certain people have made them believe are coming towards them on a day-to-day basis. I want you, white person, to not apologize for being white. All right, you were born white. You didn't ask to be white. This is just the cards that you were dealt. Okay, you are who you are. If you are not doing anything wrong, if you are not violating another person's rights, if you are not breaking the law, if you're not blocking another person from being prosperous in life, all right, you didn't do anything wrong. You don't owe anyone an apology. Just because you happen to be white and there's some white person out there that maybe did something wrong, or there's some black person out there who has been indoctrinated to believe that something that white people in general are somehow against them, okay, what you need to do is send them to this show. Let me talk to them. All right, you don't need to apologize to them. Every apology by some crying white person on TV, like Mr. Kirk Herbstreit on ESPN, like I talked about a week or so ago, it gives an unthinking black person, this is a person who is not a critical thinker, it's a person who obviously doesn't listen to this show, or maybe they do, they stop because they didn't like what I was saying. It gives them an excuse or an incentive to feel as if they are not responsible for what they do in life. They're not responsible for their position in life. Oh, well, look at this white person crying about the fact that they're white. No, this must mean that being white is some kind of a privilege. Look, this person's crying about it. They're apologizing for being white, then I must be right. Or the race hustler who I follow on Instagram must be right in telling me that there's something wrong about being black and there's something wrong about being white because this person's apologizing for it. So obviously that race hustler must be right with what they've been telling me. Could you consider, let me ask you a question. Could you consider being born white in America a lucky break? I would say yes. I would consider being born tall and you want to play basketball, that's a lucky break as well. Sometimes in life, luck happens. I talk about this in my masterclass, Hard Work Ain't Enough. Luck is one of the factors that leads to success in life. Luck is a factor in success. Yes, you heard me correctly. And if you didn't know, I've talked about luck in several episodes of this show. If you want to refer yourself to a few, listen to masterclass number 1220, How to Manufacture Luck. Number 1154, luck does matter. Here's what to do about it. Masterclass number 854, how to be outside often. That's a strategy for luck. Masterclass number 840, does luck matter? Yes. Here's how to use it. You can just start with those. Is being born white in America lucky? Or being white in America, is that luck? Yes. Guess what? Luck is a thing, ladies and gentlemen. Someone born into a poor family who's living in the projects, is that unlucky? Yes. That is unlucky. It doesn't make it your job, just because you were born lucky, to pull up somebody who was born unlucky. Yes, you heard me correctly. Let me say it again, just in case anybody didn't hear me. Just because one person was born lucky, it does not make it their job to help the person who was born unlucky. The person who was born unlucky, as soon as you realize that you were born unlucky, and I just told you, if you happen to be that person born into a poor family in the projects, it's not anybody else's job to pull you up. It's your job to pull yourself up. As soon as you realize that you were born unlucky, guess what? You might just have to work 10 times harder than another person. I got a whole masterclass coming on that exact topic. Sometimes in life, you're just behind the 8 ball. You get dealt a shitty hand and you got to work 10 times harder than another person who didn't do anything to earn the luck that they got, but they don't have to work as hard as you do. Is that fucked up in some ways? You can look at it that way if you want to. I wouldn't be mad at you. But is it the game? Damn right it's the game. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? Don't hate the game. Don't hate the players. Play the game and work on your game. That's why this show is the show. It is not another person's job to pull you up just because they got luck that you didn't have. This is the truth. Is it an ugly truth? Maybe. But the truth, nobody said the truth had to be pretty. It just got to be true. Point number 2. The topic here today is what concerned white people can do if you want to get involved in actually it's point number 3. What concerned white people can do if you want to get involved in the social justice movement and help black people out. Point number 3, stop bowing to concerned or angry black people, race hustling black people who pressure you to feel guilty about your alleged privilege. Let me say that one more time. Stop bowing to angry black race hustlers who are pressuring you to feel guilty about your alleged privilege of being white. Now, I talked about white privilege on this show back in masterclass number 1533. If you happen to be black in America, how do you combat white privilege? Again, that's masterclass number 1533. If you haven't heard it, I suggest you pause this one, go listen to that one, and you can come back. And I talked about the race hustlers. I talked about them in many episodes here on this show. What is a race hustler? Just a quick synopsis is a person of color who, and sometimes they're white too, we usually call them social justice warriors, but a race hustler is a black person in America whose very job is to stir up any type of animosity, any type of consternation, any type of confusion or anger amongst their own people on the subject of race. In other words, a race hustler is a person who gets on the internet every day, or they go out in real life every day, but the internet is much more efficient, and they look for reasons to stir up their army and audience of sheep, usually people of color as well, to be angry at a white person who is doing something that is somehow looked at as taking advantage of their privilege, or racist, or just ignorant of the fact that they have privilege, or ignorant of their racism, or to even get mad at a black person who is saying something that's not along the party lines, not saying the right things. In other words, a race hustler could hear something about what I'm saying right now and try to use it against me to stir up their army of sheep against me because they don't like what I'm saying here because it's a little bit too down the center. But for the most part, they can't do it with this show because it's hard to take things that I say on this show out of context. Not to say they can't happen. It's hard to take things I say on this show out of context because I'm able to give full context. That's the great thing about having the show. Do not allow these white person who's listening to me, do not allow these race hustlers to pressure you into feeling guilty about being white. Because when they do this, when a white person goes on TV or on the internet or in a book or wherever, out in public, like Kirk Herbstreit on ESPN, like I talked about a couple episodes ago, and they basically apologize for their whiteness, or they cry about the fact that they're white and they didn't know that black people felt a certain way about the cops, or allegedly black people, not all black people, but some black people feel a certain way about the cops, about the government, about life, etc., etc. You know what this does? It takes the unthinking black people, and unfortunately there's a large population of them, the unthinking black sheep. It entices them to continue feeling like they're victims. Well, look, this white person's crying about being white, so I must be right. I am a victim. They're crying about it. They're sad about it. I should be sad too. It entices them to continue to feel like victims, and it slows black people as a group from advancing because we keep looking at ourselves as victims. As long as any group of people look at themselves as a victim, that group is not going anywhere. I talked about this in masterclass number 1524. The topic is, we are not victims. Again, that's masterclass number 1524. I don't care what stats you can lay out. This is a white person I'm talking to. I don't care how many black friends you have. I don't care what argument you can make for why you have more advantages than me. Even if you believe all of them, even if they are factually, you can factually defend them. You can prove them all factually that you have more advantages than I have. I will probably agree with you. Let me tell you something. What is on your plate doesn't fill my stomach. Just because you have certain advantages that I don't have doesn't mean you owe me anything. It doesn't mean that I should complain about the game. It doesn't mean that I should be mad at you. It doesn't mean I should feel like a victim. Sometimes that's just the way the game goes. I've told you about many times in my life where I got dealt unlucky hands. There were times where I got dealt lucky hands. I'll tell you a lucky hand that I got dealt. I was born to be 6 feet 4 inches tall, became a basketball player. That's a lucky hand. Had I been the same height as my parents, I probably wouldn't become a basketball player. The whole situation would be different. Whole butterfly effect. I'll tell you an unlucky situation. I got recruited to play college basketball, played 1 year for the coach who recruited me. Then he got fired. New coach came in. I was off the team. Unlucky situation. Did I blame the system? Did I blame the coach? Did I complain? Did I protest? Did I do any of those things? No. What did I do? I played the unlucky hand that I was dealt, and I turned it into a winning situation. This is what everybody has to do in life. And anyone who's listening to this, who has created success in your life, I guarantee you have done this at least once in your life. Probably multiple times. Have you not? What is on somebody else's plate has nothing to do with how hungry you are. Well, whether you'll still be hungry or not. Let's put it that way. Point number 4. Topic here today is what a white person can do in America or anywhere in the world if you want to do something to support the social justice movement. You want to help black people out because you feel like they need your help. You feel like they need your assistance. You feel like you need to do something. You can't just stand by silently and do nothing. I'm telling you what to do today. Point number 4, here's what you can do tangibly, okay? If you want to get active, you want to physically actually go out and do something. Here's what you do. Listen very closely to what I'm about to say, and I would really welcome you to do what I'm about to tell you. Start sharing with other people of any color. If you want to help black people out, share this with black people. What steps were taken by you or by your family or by your ancestors to create your privilege, to create your position of love, to create your position of power, to create the success that you have in life. Start telling people what steps got taken for you to be in the position that you are. You're in a position of privilege. There's something that you did to create that privilege. What'd you do? How'd you do it? What steps did you take? And I guarantee you it was more than just being born white. All right, there's some things that you did. And if you didn't do them, then your parents did them, or your uncle did them, or your grandparents did them, or their parents did them. Somebody did something to put you in this position. If you feel like you have privilege, first of all, what is the privilege? And then tell me how that privilege got created. Because I guarantee it's more than just being white. Because there's some poor, broke, fucked up white people out here too. So being white alone is not the privilege. What happened in your family or with you that created the success and the position that you have right now? However you did that, I need you to break it down, codify it, and start sharing it. What business got started by you or somebody in your family? What knowledge was acquired and gets passed down? What disciplines are practiced? Human capital is the key to group success, ladies and gentlemen. Human capital. What is human capital? Knowledge, resources, discipline, confidence, connections, networks, relationships. These are all human capital. They are skills within a human being. The more human capital a group amasses, the more they get done, the more wealth they can create. No group can rise without an overall increase in human capital. Human capital creates financial capital. Human capital creates financial capital. I talked about creating wealth in episode number 1477. I would say I'm going to do an episode on human capital, but actually every episode of this show is human capital, because every day I'm giving you something that if you listen to it and apply it and really think about it and turn it over in your mind, even if you disagree with what I said and you come up with a strong argument against something that I say, that is making you smarter. It's making you more of a critical thinker, and you can take what you had thought about and you can apply it in some way. You have developed human capital. Every time you get smarter, you have increased your human capital. Human capital creates tangible capital. This is the way that any group rises. Any group that has picked themselves up by the bootstraps and become successful as a group, whether that's a family unit, whether it's a religion, whether it's a color, whether it's a country, a sports team, it is because of the amassing of human capital. The Los Angeles Lakers won the NBA championship this year. What was the human capital? What were the key human capital that they amassed to become so great? I would say the key human capital was LeBron James and Anthony Davis. What do both of those guys have? Skills. They got skills on the basketball court. That is the human capital that allowed them to win the championship. Now, did other people contribute? Absolutely. But those are the biggest human capital that they had. Take away that human capital of LeBron and Anthony Davis, ain't no Laker privilege without talent and human capital. You understand what I'm saying? How Barack Obama won the presidency? The human capital. The guy was a great speaker. He was a great orator. He made people feel hopeful. He made people feel positive. He made people feel optimistic. He made people feel confident in him, even if what he was saying, he could have said something that made no sense, but he said it in such an eloquent way that it sounded profound, right? That's a skill. That is human capital. That is part of why he won. I'm not saying that to knock him. I'm saying that I'm giving him credit. This is how groups rise. So if you want to help people rise of whatever color you are, whatever color they are, share with them the human capital, or at least how the human capital was acquired so they can do the same for themselves. Teach them how to fish. Don't go around handing out fish. Let's recap today's class, which is what a concerned white person can do for black people if you feel inclined to do something about the social justice movement that's going on out here, if you want to call it a movement. Point number 1, do not build wings for the bird. All right, once a bird falls out the nest, the only thing you are allowed to do is put it back in the nest. Otherwise, get the fuck out the way. Don't offer help. Don't make new programs. People do not pick themselves up until or unless they are forced to. Your help hurts because people do not learn to be self-sufficient when you hand them a fish, give them a fishing pole, and teach them how to fish. Point number 2, stop apologizing for being white. You are who you are. You didn't do anything wrong being white. Every apology and crying white person on TV gives an unthinking, sheep-like black person an excuse or incentive to feel that they are not responsible for where they are in life. Could you consider being white in America lucky? Yes. Guess what? Luck is a thing. Could being born into a poor family living in the projects, is that unlucky? Yes. Bad luck is a thing too. Is this the truth? Yes. Is it an ugly truth? Yes. But is it the truth? Yes. Point number 3. Stop bowing to black people who pressure you to feel guilty about your alleged privilege. All right, it's enticing black people to feel like victims, and we can't advance as long as we look at ourselves as victims. I don't care what stats you lay out, how many black friends you have who agree with you. What you have on your plate does not fill another person's stomach. And point number 4, what you can do if you want to get active, start sharing with people the human capital that you have and how that human capital was acquired so they can do the exact same thing. You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man to fish, you feed him for life. So if you really want to help, put people in position to feed themselves. Work on your game. Dre all day.